Everybody has a passion, everybody has something that they want to share and express.
I don't think I would do while working for somebody else.
I'd love to work just as hard, but make my dreams come true.
Epicenter offers all of the resources that you would need to start a business.
Well, the space is awesome. I love working here.
They brought in subject experts on business and marketing, law.
Everyone here is very innovative.
If you want to start your business, this is the place to do it.
All right, welcome to Rethink the World, Campus Party's first ever digital edition. We are excited to have Yvonne Pilon, Akash Charuvila, Noah Campbell, and Matthew Johnson present a new kind of CAVEwoman, U.S.-Canada Automobility Technologies, binational partnerships, and more. So, without further ado, take it away, presenters.
Hello and good afternoon, Campuseros, all of those watching. We'd love to know where you're from, where you're watching. I know you have a live comment feature, so feel free to share where you're tuning in from. And welcome to the Green Power stage. My name is Yvonne Pilon, as Juliana mentioned, and I am your moderator for today's session. If you are been watching the Green Power station, you actually had a chance to see our cross-border friends from Techtown Detroit talk about building smarter communities with urban innovation. So hopefully you got to tune into that session. But before we get started, I'll be also part of the advisory board for Campus Party Detroit. We are so excited to see you in person, hopefully inside 2021, as you saw just before this session, the commercial for Campus Party Detroit. So hopefully we'll see you in live. So at any point during today's presentation, we encourage you to share the word of Campus Party Digital Edition and what you've learned today from some of your Canadian friends using the Where Canada Begins hashtag or the CPBE hashtag. So want to make sure you're in the right session. It is a new kind of CAVEwoman or CAVEman. You're actually going to meet the official CAVEman, Akash, today. And we're going to be talking in this session not only about the uniquenesses of Windsor, Ontario, which happens to be literally a view away to our US friends in Detroit, Michigan. So we're going to learn about some of the great innovative technologies that are taking place on both sides of the border, looking at how we're truly building a very unique mobility region, a binational region. And then for all those Campuseros who want to know how do you leverage the mobility industry, you're going to hear from Noah Campbell, who's going to talk about how he's truly transformed the tech community here in engaging audiences, not only across the border in Detroit, but across the world. So without further ado, I'm going to move to the next slide here. And I get to introduce their colleagues, but they're also friends. First, I'd like to introduce Matthew Johnson. He is the Director of Investment Attraction at the Windsor Essex Economic Development Corporation. Matt, I'll give you a few minutes to say hello and share more about yourself.
Great, thanks so much, Yvonne, and hello, everybody. Excited to be here today. So my name again, Matthew Johnson. I'm the Director of Investment Attraction here at Windsor Essex Economic Development Corporation. We are the full-service economic development agency for the City of Windsor and the County of Essex. So we predominantly work with companies that are looking to invest in the region, are looking to grow in the region, and that are looking to start. We offer a good service, bring to new company, and be happy to find anytime in the future.
Awesome, thanks, Matt. And I'm not sure if it's the audio, but you were a little choppy there, so I'm not sure if it's the stream. But next we have the CAVEman himself, Akash Charuvila. He is the virtual reality cave operator as part of the SimuTech Group Canada. So Akash, please tell us more about yourself.
Thanks, Yvonne, and good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Akash Charuvila, and I work for SimuTech Group. SimuTech Group is the elite channel partner for our ANSYS products, and I am embedded at the Institute of Model Logistics as the virtual reality cave operator, or the CAVEman. So my role is to provide technical expertise to companies and help them identify potential applications of the VR cave so that they can come up with innovative products and processes.
Thank you, Akash. And last but not least, we have the Tech Community Liaison Officer from the Border Logistics and Security. His name is Noah Campbell. Noah, I know you could speak for hours of all the amazing things you're doing, so tell us more about yourself.
Thanks so much, Yvonne. Hi, everyone. As Yvonne mentioned, I'm Noah Campbell, the Tech Community Liaison Officer for the Windsor Essex Economic Development Corporation and WeTech Alliance. I'm stationed out of the Institute for Border Logistics and Security, so sometimes I get to be the assistant caveman, so excited for that and to talk about those exciting VR technology we have. In addition to that, I get to do a lot of really cool stuff that partners students with industry by tech connecting to different opportunities. So whether that's hackathons, events, or workshops, we're here to provide that kind of binational collaboration to connect students with industry. So I'm going to talk about that later in the presentation.
Perfect. Thank you, Noah. And before we begin, we are the Canadians on a US stage. So we thought, what better way to break the ice, have a little fun, make fun of ourselves a little bit too, is to talk about some misconceptions about Canada. As you can tell, none of us are living in igloos, although we do have a serious heat wave here happening in Windsor. So if we don't live in igloos, I feel like my house feels like an igloo today. But just looking at the screen again, Canada is big. No, Canada is actually very huge. In fact, we are the second largest in terms of geography mass in the world. So Russia being number one. There are no famous Canadians. In fact, that is inaccurate. Seth is amazing. We have Celine Dion and we have Avril Lavigne, and there's many, many more. A lot of people think we all play hockey. And in fact, I'm not sure if anyone on this call who plays hockey. See,
no.
Not everyone plays hockey. However, we have built and created some amazing players, and we in fact did invent the sport. One thing people think, I know this is an interesting one about milk and bags. We do sell milk and bags, believe it or not, but we also do sell them in cartons as well. People think Toronto is the capital of Canada. In fact, it's wrong. Ottawa happens to be our capital, which is about 8 hours or so from where we are in Windsor, Ontario. Lastly, there is a lot of snow and ice in parts of the country, but what's beautiful about our region is it is where Canada begins. So at any point throughout this presentation, you want to know more about our region, more about the great institutions and organizations, you can go to www.wherecanadabegins.com. We have amazing climate here. I wish I could show you outside, but yeah, that's a little bit of the misconceptions, and you probably will hear me say A at some point throughout the day. So I'm going to pass this along to Matt to take over the first portion of today's presentation to talk about not only the history, trying to give you a good foundation of the binational region that Windsor and Detroit have. So Matt, I'll pass it along to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Yvonne. And hopefully my sound's a little bit better right now. All right,
It's sounding good. Yes.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. And I really think this is a great slide to start with because it really shows, these two images really show kind of the depiction and vision for the Windsor-Essex region. So we have on the left in 1904 when Henry Ford established his first automotive facility in Canada, being established here in Windsor-Essex. Was really the beginning of that industrial revolution for Canada and for Windsor-Essex. Today, on the right, you see the automotive industry is changing at a rapid pace. So that includes vehicle manufacturing, and vehicles no longer are really being manufactured by the big three, so to say. Instead, you see companies like Waymo and Rivian and others establishing manufacturing and small batch manufacturing, customized electric vehicles all within these new kind of manufacturing and automotive manufacturing realms. So the vehicles today are really technology products, and it's estimated, I think, Noah, you can probably correct me here, but there's over 200 million lines of code within each of these vehicles. So really, you're not just designing a vehicle, you're designing a piece of software as well. So this depiction really highlights our shift locally from traditional manufacturing to automation and now into mobility. So go to the next slide there. Perfect. So before I get into some of the specific projects around, what we've been working on here from a binational standpoint, I think it's really important to set the context of our region. So set the premise of, Windsor Essex as a region and its connection to Detroit. So we are the most southern point in Canada, as Yvonne mentioned. We're probably a population from just over 400,000 people, and we are basically the only Canadian suburb of Detroit itself. So,
South Detroit.
Exactly. We see ourselves very much ingrained both economically, socially to the greater Metro Detroit region. And as you can see from this slide, trade and logistics really is in our DNA. So locally, it makes up one of our dominating economic sectors here. You have 15,000 cars that cross the border, 8,000 trucks that cross, 7,500 commuters that cross the border each day, totaling about a third of all trade between Canada and U.S. So we are the busiest U.S.-Canadian crossing between the two countries. A couple other just major sectors in our region to touch on from a context standpoint, we do have a large agri-food sector. So there's over 100 food and beverage processing companies in our region, 4,500 acres of greenhouse. All of this is great because it leads to, again, the trade discussion where 70% of what's grown is exported into the U.S., but also the discussion around automation and the types of technologies that can help with those automating of processes. And then secondly, we have a strong sector in manufacturing. So much like the city of Detroit is the automotive capital of the U.S., Windsor Essex is the automotive capital of Canada. So we have 90 plus auto parts manufacturers. We have 2 OEMs, over 1,000 manufacturers in our region, over 300 automation firms locally. We're home to the Canadian Association of Mold Makers and Automate Canada. So seeing those two national industry associations have their home here and presence in Windsor Essex really solidifies why this region is that hub for Canada and when partnered with Detroit for North America. So I know today we're going to focus on automotive tech. So I thought we would dive a little bit deeper into the stats and figures from a regional standpoint. I mentioned the vision for our region really is based on this kind of natural transition from automotive manufacturing to automobility and that convergence of auto and tech. To get a bit nerdy for a second, economic developers, we do like to use things like location quotients, and really this is to help us identify where clusters and concentrations of workforce, industry, and sector occupations lie. So basically this benchmarks you against other regions domestically, and anything over a 1 is considered a cluster, right? So when you look at automotive manufacturing in Canada, Windsor Essex has a location quotient of 12. So that's significant when you're talking about clustering. When you add in the ICT sector and this notion of automobility, we have a location quotient of 2.1. So you're starting to see that there really is this concentration of tech and automotive manufacturing converging in Windsor Essex. And then you factor in all of the amazing work on the US side, the greater Detroit area, that location quotient will double, triple as you start including more of their industry into this picture. One thing I will say is I love this picture because not only does it depict kind of the global HQ for GM and on the left and the Canadian HQ for FCA on the right, but it highlights the proximity of our region. So I think one of the things we like to do in investment attraction is host companies here and show them the region. Like I said, like a picture says 1,000 words. The proximity that we have to the U.S. is unique across a number of different jurisdictions globally. So yes, we have this political border, but from a business standpoint, that's essentially non-existent. So our binational supply chains are extremely unique. And in fact, there's parts for the Chrysler Pacifica that's shown in this picture here that cross the border up to 7 times before being finally installed into the vehicle itself. So like I mentioned, we are very much a binational region. Our supply chains are very much integrated, and they have been since 1904 when Henry Ford opened up that first factory. So when we're looking at border trends itself, I think it's important to show both of these graphs because they really show that flow of traffic between our two nations. So quite clearly, we are a hub for the movement of goods. You can see that after 9/11, there's this dramatic drop of passenger travel. However, if you look at truck traffic, which is our commercial goods crossing, it remains fairly consistent and steady across all of the years that are shown in this graph. The chart on the right really solidifies that the Windsor-Detroit region is that busiest Canada-US crossing, and by far. So what you're seeing now is that we're moving back up to the pre-2008 recession levels. This obviously is pre-COVID as well, so I'm sure we'll see a dip coming out of this pandemic, but fully expect this to ramp up again back to normal levels where we see them in this chart. One of the things I'll get into a little bit later is our project with MyoVision and the interesting data that we've seen come out of that project around the flow of good and trade between our two nations. Yes, the border is technically closed for visiting and for traveling around our countries, but for essential products and essential people in the workforce, it's still very much open, and we'll get into that a little bit. So in terms of border crossing for our region, so I thought it'd be interesting to kind of highlight the different types of crossings that we have here in Windsor Essex, as well as the different opportunities that exist for technology to be tested. We have 4 commercial border crossings right now. We have a tunnel, the rail tunnel, the Ambassador Bridge, truck ferry, and the new $5.7 billion investment is the Gordie Howe International Bridge. Both of these, this Gordie Howe International Bridge investment connects directly to 2 major pieces of infrastructure on the U.S. and Canadian side. The U.S. side, the I-75 highway, which is basically the U.S. artery from north to south, and the Herb Gray Parkway, which connects into the 400 series highway, which connects all the way from Windsor up to Montreal. So you have pretty predominant trade corridor that basically connects you north to south across North America. So we have a great network of physical infrastructure that's been established here. But in terms of what's going on from a vehicle to infrastructure connectivity standpoint, Michigan really is the home to the largest deployment of V2I technology in the United States. So they have a smart corridor, which includes cameras, sensors, collection of big data to help drivers kind of avoid construction, less time in traffic, stay safer, all those types of things. So you can see in this map that this ends at the border, but I'm happy to say this is no longer the case. I'll get into that again with our MyoVision projects. But in Ontario, the Ontario Good Roads Association embarked on a really forward-thinking initiative to test on controlled roadways, the autonomous vehicle, and autonomous vehicle research. So this connection goes from Windsor to Ottawa as well, so it's a significant corridor for vehicle traffic. And working with our partners at the City of Windsor and County of Essex, we've been able to identify roadways in the City of Windsor that match up to this Windsor to Ottawa corridor. Not surprisingly, they are traditionally around the border crossings because we want to have that connection of the binational aspect.
And I think about we got 2 last slides for you.
Oh, sorry. So then in terms of pilots that have taken place, we've got a couple pilots that we should definitely make mention of. So the first being the Magna and Continental. So this is the first binational crossing of an autonomous vehicle. So this vehicle traveled from, I believe it was Ann Arbor, over to Windsor through our tunnel, then back up, looped around from Sarnia, and then into Traverse City. And this was really to leverage the launch of a new binational MOU that was signed to help with the investment of autonomous vehicle testing. So we're now working with a company looking at piloting an autonomous shuttle to help move healthcare workers across the border. One of the interesting things is now that COVID's started, we don't see the ability for us to actually go ahead with a physical pilot, but from our feasibility studies, we've been able to see that 55% of the nurses that we've studied to help with this travel across the border are very supportive of this shared mobility system. So in terms of some tech opportunities, so what we're seeing here, I mentioned it briefly, the Gordie Howe International Bridge. This is a $5.7 billion investment for our region, a 100-year plus piece of infrastructure that there's a huge opportunity for us to leverage. We've been working closely with them on how we can create an economic development strategy that leverages technologies to help either bring in new sensors, dynamic lanes, look at different biometrics for security screenings to help with crossings of both people and goods. So it's a really interesting project that we've been working on, and one we would love to explore more with additional companies. And then another project underway is our work with MyoVision. So recognizing that on the US side, they've specifically in Detroit, they've deployed these types of sensor technologies using MyoVision equipment. We also said, how do we leverage the same technology in our region to gather the same data so that we can really get a good understanding of cross-border movement and people and goods. So some interesting stats so far from the project are that at any given time, there's no less than 50 trucks that are moving through Huron Church, which is the main artery in our city. And at peak times, it's close to 300. So you can see it's a significant corridor. And the system really allows our transportation planning teams at the city of Windsor and county to make improvements. So they've actually timed up traffic signals for these trucks, and they've seen a 20% improvement 8 times. So lastly, this equipment's really crucial for monitoring our impact from COVID. So what we have been doing is we've been leveraging this technology to help us understand the impact of the flow of goods. So happy to say we're back to around 90% pre-COVID level of the movement of essential goods. And that's really helped us with both leveraging our industry sectors to say, this is the type of investment we're going to need to see from government to help us recover and rebound from this COVID-19. So,
and Matt, I know, yeah, we'll let you take a glass of water. You're talking and sharing so much information. I know in regards to MyoVision, when we had them down in Windsor during Tech Week, one of the stats that was shared was that, when you think about traffic in the border, every time a truck driver puts his brakes on, it costs the company $1. So as you can imagine, technologies like MyoVision are really trying to streamline the traffic. And if you've ever been to Windsor or have driven through, if you're on Huron Church, it is literally truck. So the ease of mobility through that and timing those lights is critical. Again, imagine brake, $1, brake, $1. So I found that really, really interesting. So now we're going to move on. We promised you a tour of our virtual reality cave, and who better to give you the insights as well as its capabilities and actually show you inside what it looks like is our caveman, Akash. So Akash, please share more insight on the VR cave.
Thanks, Yvonne. Hello again. I'm Akash, and I'm the CAVEman, or the virtual reality cave operator. So what you see on the left is the virtual reality cave. Yes, I get to play with this every day. And before we dive into the virtual reality cave, I will just give you some insight on how the cave came into be. So the $4.6 million project was funded by AVIN. AVIN is the Autonomous Vehicle Innovation Network, and we are one of the 6 regional technology development sites that work towards advancing technology in the connected and AV space. And the VR cave here in Windsor is directed towards companies, small and medium scale companies that plan to work in the CV and AV space, and we give them access to technology, research and development support. All of this free of cost if they meet the mandate set by AVIN. And we are proud to say that we are the largest VR cave in Canada, designed for the CV and AV testing. And what you see see on the screen is of our 4 screens. These are lit by 4 high definition 4K projectors. So we have 3 screens on the sides and 1 on the floor, and all these screens work together to create an immersive environment, a 3D immersive environment where you can view data in 3D and also interact with it. So we have full body tracking, and you could move around the cave, and the model or the environment moves accordingly, and it allows you to interact with the digital environment as well. So the cave is powered by ANSYS that provided us with the VR experience software that runs the cave. SimuTech is our technical expertise partner, and Barco provided us with the projectors, the 4K projectors that power the cave. And with these, we are able to provide capabilities such as advanced manufacturing simulations, autonomous testing, perceived quality evaluations, and I'm going to talk about more in detail in the next slides to come. So I want to talk about 2 main aspects of autonomous vehicle design. So one is the design. The cave allows us to take a CAD model and deploy it in the VR cave. We could assign textures, colors, materials to the model and create a very high fidelity model. As you can see, we can change the colors on the fly. We can change the color of the car paint, interior. And as the model moves, you could see how the light reflects off it. So it's just not a rendering; it's a physics-based simulation where the final product would be similar to what you would see on an actual vehicle. So we are able to create a high-fidelity model which you could experience inside the VR cave. You could interact with it, and this allows the designers to come up with designs very quickly. It reduces the turnaround time, and it also eliminates the need for expensive design prototypes. Moving on to the next slide. The second aspect that I want to focus is self-driving cars or connected and autonomous vehicles. And for any autonomous vehicle to be considered ready, it has to be tested for millions of miles, 275 million miles to be specific. And it has to be it has to be tested in different scenarios. It cannot be like you drive a self-driving car on a highway for 275 million miles, which itself is difficult. So simulation allows you to create different scenarios where you could test these technologies and take decisions before you actually deploy them on the road. And the VR cave here acts as a test bed for CAV technologies. So you could create a virtual environment using open maps available online, and you could insert traffic simulations and road logic into it. And this allows you to create different scenarios where you could where you could deploy pedestrians, change weather conditions, and see if the technology works perfectly in all these scenarios. And one use case would be the testing for sensors. So because we are able to create these lifelike virtual environments, you could see how the sensors could perceive the environment, and then you could fine tune your platform so that it works in every condition. So we could test software, the algorithm that would the machine learning algorithm that would eventually drive the car. We could test hardware, and you could also have the driver in the loop to see how your platform reacts when there is when a human is driving the car. And moving on to the next slide. we have and we already have a compendium of readily available environments. So we have the MCT, that's the University of Michigan test track. So this is essentially a digital twin of the actual test track, and you could deploy your self-driving car in this virtual environment and see how it reacts to different situations. And then based on the results, you could fine-tune your platform, and then you could test it again on the actual track. Apart from the MCT test track, we have a lot of highways, motorways, and a lot of city and country roads where you could test your platform. And we have a lot of objects and actors. So we have different vehicles, cars, trucks, and different pedestrians. So you could actually create any environment where you would want to test your platform to see how it works and fine tune it before you get on to the actual road. Moving on to the next slide. So this video is the VR cave in action. So I have deployed a self-driving car. I am sitting in the driving simulator, but the car is driving on its own, and it's driving. It's looking at all the traffic signs, and it's reacting accordingly. And while the car is self-driving, I could also test for ergonomics of my interior. The interior of the car, of a self-driving car, would be completely different than the conventional automotive. And we could not only test how the software and the hardware work, we could also ensure that the design for the self-driving car of the future is inclusive for everyone in the society. We could test it for reads, ergonomics, and other HMI evaluations. So I could essentially take an HTML file, link it to the infotainment, and test the user interface to see how intuitive it is, how good it looks with the design, and is it ergonomically feasible. All of this can be tested in the VR cave. And moving on to the next slide. The next program that we're running here is the Digital Twinning Program. This program was funded by FedDev Ontario, and this focuses towards companies and helping them adopt advanced manufacturing techniques. We identified that most of the companies need research and development support and technical know-how to adopt these technologies, and the program was established with St. Clair College, Canadian Association of Mold Makers, and Automate Canada. And we are encouraging companies to adopt digital twinning and other advanced manufacturing practices. And we are getting very good response. The goal of the program is to have 10 companies participate, and we already have 17 companies that have expressed interest, and 7 companies are already on board. And while we have this amazing physical asset, what we realized is we definitely need some tools so that we could showcase the VR cave to companies across Canada and outside Canada. And that's why we invested in WebEx Technologies. So we have an array of cameras and microphones placed inside the VR cave that allows us to showcase the VR cave to companies over WebEx. We have showcased the cave to many companies in Canada and outside Canada. And if you are working in the connected and autonomous space and you would like to collaborate, we could set up a WebEx and we could showcase you the VR cave and everything that we are working on in detail, and we could take it forward from there. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Akash. And I must say, you probably have the coolest job. Watching that video, a little bit jealous. And it was interesting. I was doing some research last night on MCity. And as you know, we have the digital twin, but it actually is a living lab in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And they're doing, again, some really interesting testing on motion sickness, right? As we look to the future of the inside of a vehicle, how do people react when they're on their phones, right? If we're really going to embrace this back, watch TV. So again, there's so much opportunity with this kind of twinning and awesome stuff you're doing. Now we want to talk a little bit about our binational partnerships. And the key thing to keep in mind here is these wouldn't happen without a warm welcome on the other side of the border. So before we start, a big thank you to all of the partners that have made all of these infrastructures, technologies, partnerships. It takes leadership and really an act for collaboration to make this happen. So Maybe I'll start a little bit on talking about women in mobility. So this is an initiative out of Detroit led by, I believe it's 5 females who really want to build out the future of women in mobility. So what is a woman in mobility? It really is a woman who has interest in the movement of people, goods, and service and data. If you Google Detroit women in mobility Detroit, you will learn more about this initiative. I encourage you to get on their mailing list. They've got a number of sessions. And on the Windsor side, we're working on looking at, again, how do we build this binational opportunity for mobility? You heard we have lots of things happening and moving across the border. Our new bridge will actually be moving people actually walking and biking across the bridge. So again, a great initiative, and again, trying to build that binational region. And just recently, we, as a region, partnered with the Detroit Mobility Lab, which, Matt, you can share more insight on.
Yeah, thanks. So this really is a binational mobility partnership aimed at supporting companies on both sides of the border. So helping them to expand into new markets and really help us create this really powerful mobility node in North America. So through the partnership, we'll provide one-on-one support to CEOs and founders that are working on foreign direct investment projects. Provide access to business development workshops, virtual and physical space to facilitate networking. So really this binational partnership will help encourage that international mobility companies can come here and further explore the advantages of the Detroit Windsor region. And our goal is to work with 50 companies this year. We have some great support on the US side, Yvonne, that you mentioned. I mean, Chris Thomas and Jessica Robinson are our partners from DML on the US side. They're fantastic to work with. They've been so good at making introductions to the new contacts and networks and really helping to support and grow this Detroit Mobility Lab network.
And those are definitely, Chris and Jessica are 2 people. So Jessica Robinson and Chris Thomas are 2 people. If you want to learn more about what mobility, the future of mobility and leaders, not just here in our binational region, but across the globe, those are 2 people I would highly encourage you to add on LinkedIn. And then we've got a really interesting partnership with World Economic Forum. Matt.
Yeah, so on June 28th in 2018, the World Economic Forum selected Ann Arbor, Detroit, Windsor to help create this pilot this seamless integrated mobility system. So we were the region selected out of 13 global applications. And really what this binational tri-city project is aiming to do is twofold. One, creating a data sharing agreement or platform between the 3 jurisdictions and local jurisdictions, and then 2 national jurisdictions. But we'll be creating this data sharing agreement and then also creating an employer-based mobility pilot. So I talked a little bit about having healthcare workers cross into the U.S. We have about out of the 7,500 that cross each day, about 1,500 of those are healthcare workers. So we've been working with one of the healthcare providers in the U.S. to look at how we can create an autonomous shuttle to help move people into the workplace itself. So it's a really neat project and one that we're excited to work with all 3 cities on. But it's quite a good opportunity for the region itself to boast and celebrate. We do have mobility expertise in our.
And thank you, Matt. And Matt, now again, I think that wraps up your part now. Last but not least, we have Noah Campbell again for the Campuseros who are watching now, and for hopefully the thousands who are watching later on demand. Noah is one of you. So Noah, why don't you share a little bit of how you really embrace this mobility economic development strategy to build out opportunities that you've done, but also how do you, what insight for opportunities for other Campuseros in other regions you can share?
Thanks, Yvonne, and thanks everyone. I'm distracted because I'm blown away still by the VR cave and the simulations that we've seen in there. And I've been able to actually be a part of that, which has been great. The other day we had the simulator in the VR cave, the driving simulator. Safe to say that Akash will be taking away my autonomous vehicle driving license pretty closely because of how poorly I drive. So lots of opportunities for folks to get involved though. Matt, Akash, Yvonne all listed a lot of great technologies and infrastructures that exist, but how do students and Campuseros and tech professionals, young professionals, new grads actually access some of this stuff, right? So that for Windsor, that started with Google. We worked with Google developers to establish the Developer Student Club at the University of Windsor. It's an offshoot of the Google Developers Group. DSCU Windsor was, I got to look at this to make sure I have it right because I'm still surprised every time, but we're the first out of 25 DSCs in North America. So in the entire continent, the University of Windsor had the first out of 25 of these offshoots for Google. Through that, we set up this Google trifecta with the Google Developer Group, Developer Student Club, and the Women Tech Makers, advocating for women in STEM. And through this partnership, we're able to create opportunities and different initiatives that engage students with industry and some of the amazing technologies that we have here in Windsor on that binational level. So with them, with Google and these organizations we've set up, along with a really great array of partners, these are just some of them, there's so many others, we've been able to establish some really key events for our region and some really key initiatives for our region that anybody can get involved with. I'm a student at the University of Windsor for another 2 months in computer science, and I finally graduate. And we've been able to establish these kinds of events. So WinHacks was our first ever hackathon. We went digital on the 2 weeks notice due to COVID-19. It just happened in March. This was an awesome event that allowed students to do a lot of different things in mobility. The theme was mobility, so they created solutions in mobility. Lancer Gaming, I know esports is a big part of Campus Party. The University of Windsor now has the first official esports program in Canada. So we're really awesome to be able to share that information. And again, students from the States, we want you to get involved with that. So look up Lancer Gaming. The Women in Cybersecurity, very first branch in Canada, happened at the University of Windsor. So as we look at all these autonomous vehicles and we look at the 200 million lines of code required to develop a vehicle or an autonomous vehicle, we have to secure that. So we're looking at being able to branch out education in automobility cybersecurity. And of course, we had the 2019 Canadian Undergraduate Computer Science Conference, which was the first ever offshoot of that, happened in Windsor. And why we got that was because of our proximity to Detroit and the ability to bring in folks from Detroit, Michigan, and really show how intertwined we are. Yvonne, if we move on into the next slide, we'll be able to see what this has all led to, right? We've seen a lot of different really great collaborations with BlackBerry. I'm a campus ambassador with BlackBerry. They kicked off a cybersecurity program for students at the University of Windsor. We have matriculation agreements with St. Clair College and Wayne State University that allow our students to work together. We have the Google Developers Dev Fest, which happened at the University of Windsor. Kyle Paul came down from Google Developers to share some insights to our students. We've just launched the Automotive Security Research Group. This is a worldwide group, and it's happening out of Windsor and Toronto. And CommuniTech, one of the largest tech incubators in Canada, often hosts their Code Design to Win challenge with us. So that's really amazing as well, that we're able to show off all of the different skill of the talent. As talent, you are some of the most important people to these different industries right now. You are who they want to hire. You are the future of their industry. Even in cybersecurity alone, we're going to see 4 million unfilled cybersecurity roles as we progress into this decade. That's a huge number, so getting involved with that keeps you future-proofed and job ready. To help you do that, if we move on to the next slide, we're doing another hackathon. It's called Border Hacks. It's going to happen at the end of September 25th to the 27th. And hopefully in partnership with the United States Consulate General's Office, as well as our amazing partners at TechTown Detroit. Shout out to Paula Reiser and Stacy from TechTown. They just did the session before us. If you are interested in participating in this, I've set up a quick little interest form while we get our website running. Put some info in there. We'll get back to you once the application's open in August. And we're going to have some amazing solutions in mobility from the University of Windsor, St. Clair College, and from Wayne State University. You'll have challenges provided through their industry partners that you'll be able to solve and win some really significant prizes, but most importantly, interact with industry and different companies as you start to branch out into your future and create that full-time opportunity through showcasing all the skills you've learned well in school. No more in school is it that you're just locked in a classroom all the time. That wouldn't get you through, right? We want to have those experiential learning opportunities. And by doing that and participating in hackathons, events, and a variety of different things, that we are able to, really showcase to industry the value that the tech talent adds and see where you can integrate and set up your future. So as we wrap up here, we want to go ahead and move into the Q&A, I believe, right? Is that right, Yvonne?
I have to say, team, we are literally seconds away from the 45-minute mark. It's like we actually planned this. So bravo. And this is a perfect, timely transition to Juliana, who is now going to manage our Q&A session. So feel free to chime in and ask your questions.
All right, hello. So the first question, and as I go into these questions, Campuseros, the live chat is open, so please add your questions there. But the first question that I have for you today is, what is the best resource for people who want to dive deeper into the mobility industry?
And feel free to the panelists to chime in. So if you want to just raise your hand first so that we can coordinate the answers.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, some great resources that I think of as a student, right? Being able to be a part of these different events. So our mobility hackathon, Border Hacks, I'm going to plug it again, right? It's a really great way for you to get involved with mobility at the student level, because, there's maybe not as much education around mobility yet. Wayne State University is doing a phenomenal job of that, and the university and the college, the University of Windsor and St. Clair College, are catching up with some new programs in mobility. So if you're a student, the best way to do that is through school and getting engaged with these different events. So I would definitely say Border Hacks is the first way for you to get engaged with some mobility. Also, Women in Mobility will offer some really great insights as well through speaker series programs and different events as well, just to get your feet wet. And then you can start developing projects and seeking out different companies to work with.
And sorry, Matt, next.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think to add, not only to Women in Mobility, leveraging our Detroit Mobility Lab, but it's not just for companies as well. If you're a student looking to create a company or a startup, that would be a great opportunity to get your feet wet with mobility. A great partnership with our folks in the U.S. that are showing some strong leadership in the mobility sector, and it also taps into networks on both sides of the border that you can then leverage for your own understanding.
Perfect. And Akash, anything to add?
Yeah, I just want to say that we are working on some videos that would showcase how to leverage the CAVE, what are the technologies involved. In depth, we will discuss about it and how students and industry can they leverage the CAVE and use the CAVE in their product or process development process.
Wonderful. And I think, I know in Canada we have Auto News, which has a mobility specific stream, so you can get all the information there. And as well as there's some really great research out there from McKinsey, as well as I know Deloitte has put together quite a few mobility reports. In fact, their TMT predictions, so technology, media, telecommunications predictions, had some updates on the mobility side, including a bike surge that's happened since COVID. So lots of changes in the mobility space. So thank you for that. Juliana, back to you.
All right, next question is, what is the biggest challenge / opportunity in the mobility industry at the moment?
All righty. Okay, Akash, take it away.
So just like I mentioned, the self-driving car of the future would be completely different than what we have right now. All the interior of the vehicle is focused towards driving, but when you have an L5 self-driving car and you're driving to Ottawa, for instance, you would not be focused on driving. And this is kind of like a clean slate. What we have, we have the time to ensure that the design that we come up with is inclusive for everyone, people with physical disabilities, people with visually impaired people. We can make sure that the design is inclusive for everyone, and the technology and the design is such that everyone can access these technologies.
That's great. Matt or Noah?
I think challenge / opportunity would be looking at workforce. So, I mean, no, we've had this conversation before. These are, when you're looking at autonomous vehicles, that's an extremely complex system, right? You've got mechanical engineering plus software development, which are very complex systems in and of themselves. So I think it's looking at how we can take the challenge of developing the workforce of the future, which could be an opportunity for private companies to come in and provide that training or additional training, or to work with post-secondary institutions to look at micro-credentialing to allow individuals skill to take on those new jobs that are going to be needed for the future.
And spoiler alert, folks, I mean, that's what we're working on, right? We see that there's a need for those synergies with mechanical engineering and with software development. As we develop these autonomous vehicles, we're going to need some education behind that. It's very complex, sitting there and trying to write 200 million lines of code. You know, I wouldn't want to try to do it. That's why we have to work together to find where we can build in those kinds of synergies, have some AI write some of that code for us, but not become too self-aware if you're worried about Skynet related things. But you also want to be able to really, you know, drive this kind of innovation, no pun intended, but a little bit, to make sure that we can actually have these technologies and that they're sustainable and that they're accessible. So I think as we see the bridge come together, that's a huge opportunity for some autonomous vehicles, the new bridge, and for some autonomous technologies that are really going to accelerate a lot of this growth very quickly. And COVID-19 has done a good job of that as well. Obviously, global pandemic, and there's a lot of fallout to that, but it has really increased innovation. And we think about our healthcare workers and our heroes who have been able to keep us going. Windsor, we share a lot of healthcare workers with Detroit, and vice versa. So how can we support them with these autonomous technologies? Is a shuttle that's something that we can help them with to make their day even a little bit easier while they're saving our lives? I think there's a lot of different opportunities there.
Perfect. And for me, something that's literally when I think of challenges, opportunities right now, and I mean right now, being now in somewhat a lockdown for over 100 days, I have a vehicle outside that I see every day that's not being driven, right? So when we think about mobility opportunities, how do we change, you know, the ownership of a vehicle, knowing that, again, many of us are not driving. In fact, some stats, when the pandemic hit, Canadians were spending over 200 hours per year in their cars, driving a total of 300 billion kilometers a year. That is 200 times the distance from Earth to the sun. Wow. So with now all that time saved, and what do we do at that time? What new opportunities? And I think something that keeps me up at night too is what happens to shared mobility, right? And transit, Ubers, Lyfts, micromobility, how does that change? We've seen it drastically be hit, but there's also so much more opportunities post-pandemic to leverage that. I would love to save on a car, knowing that I don't drive very often, but some of the things that keep me up at night. Juliana.
Yes, all right, next question. So what are some of the ways people from the mobility industry are making a difference in the world?
Anyone have any examples?
I think something that really stands out to me, shout out to Nicole Anderson, the director of the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy here locally. This is a federally funded, say that 10 times fast, program by the Canadian government to allow us to really support entrepreneurship in our region. And that, of course, involves our Detroit partners as well. Something that she's worked on, and we've helped support it down here at the Institute for Border Logistics and Security, is setting up a Women in Mobility speaker series. So we've applied to federal funding from our U.S. partners for that. And we want to be able to really encourage folks to get started in mobility. So Nicole, I wouldn't, consider her in mobility, but she kind of is, right? We all kind of are. And she's supporting underrepresented groups in mobility, I feel, by doing that. So we're getting people into a field that needs folks in it, needs dedicated, new, fresh folks in it. And we're setting up infrastructure for people to be able to do that. So that's somebody that just off the top of my head who is really making a difference in our region and in mobility by bringing in the much needed talent from all different areas.
Matt, Akash, any thoughts? Who's changing the world?
I think from a COVID standpoint, those companies that are looking at the last mile solutions are going to be critical going forward. As we start ordering more and more online, looking to have those deliveries right to our door, that's going to be essential for any type of e-commerce and platform that's developed. Going along the same lines as Noah, a couple of shout outs though regionally that we do need to give, because this whole mobility and automobility hub focus that our region has really gone down is sparked because of a a great asset we have here in Susan Anslin and Ed Dawson. So they are our leads for mobility in Windsor, Essex. And really what you've heard today is the culmination of 3 years of their work so far. So we're really fortunate and lucky to have them on the team, and they'd be great people to follow on Twitter or LinkedIn or wherever.
Mm-hmm.
And Akash, have you seen any mobility companies or startups really trying to change the world?
Yes, so mobility, yes, definitely has a potential to change the world. So we are not only talking about a self-driving car, but we, for a self-driving car to be a reality, the infrastructure support is also needed, and we really need. We are seeing a lot of private and government partnerships that are working together to make this a reality. The Gordie Howe Bridge being an example where we need to ensure that the infrastructure supports a self-driving car when you're crossing a border from the US or Canada or vice versa.
Yeah, no, that's very, very good. And I love that you're talking about the partnerships, because I think mobility, and I think I just read an article recently about, mobility really is going to be a partnership between all levels, right? From the public side to the industry side. On the, locally, again, not to, I know we can go national with this or global, but, it's been really great here is when we think about, mobile units, we've had a lot of testing needed, and locally, we've had a lot of mobile testing units being deployed into areas that have had a spike in COVID cases. So we're seeing that with dental, we're seeing that with breast exams, again, is in more remote communities. Mobility has been a solution to get to those communities. Just reading recently a great example of an innovation in Greater Moncton. It's basically a food truck, but a farmer's market on wheels, right? And I keep going back to the milkman or milkwoman is coming back, right? That last mile, or even just the ability to have things come to you. And I just think it opens up where it's such an inflection point on this new cusp of innovation, specifically in the mobility side. So, Julian, I'm not sure if we have another time for a question, but these are awesome questions. So if we do, we'll take one more. If not, we will wrap up.
Well, yeah, it looks like we are all out of time, but if not, I'll let you guys make some closing remarks, and then we will transition out here.
Well, before I do my closing remarks, do any of the panelists have any last comments to share with our viewers?
Just want to say, shout out to both folks in Canada and in Detroit for their willingness to work together so intertwined. COVID-19 has done a lot of awful things, obviously, but it's also really shined a light on how intertwined we actually are and how closely we can work together. So I really want to give a huge shout out to that. And obviously to all the people working on the front lines of our COVID-19 pandemic, keeping us safe, keeping us fed. You all really are doing the work. So shout out to each of you, and thank you for that. And thanks, Yvonne, for setting this up, and to Campus Party for giving us the platform.
Matt?
I would echo Noah's comments. I mean, thank you to everyone who's put this together. Thank you for tuning in and hearing about the uniqueness of this binational region. We really think we know we have a strong asset from a U.S.-Canada standpoint. So if you're interested in learning more or want to find out how you can be part of this great region, connect with any one of us. So thanks, Yvonne, and thanks, Campus Party, for putting it together.
And Caveman Akash.
Yes, I would like to thank everyone again for tuning in, and for the organizers for organizing the campus party. It was a great experience to be a part of a binational event. And if you are working in the connected and autonomous space, reach out to us, and we can definitely arrange a virtual tour of the VR cave here.
And even if you're a student, you want to learn more about all of this stuff, reach out to, I'm on Twitter, just my name and then my middle initial in there, Noah F. Campbell on Twitter. We'll set up a WebEx demo with you over with Akash. So again, it shows how interconnected we are. You don't have to physically come here, but you can still see all this infrastructure, and we can find ways for you to get involved no matter what side of the border that you're on. Sorry, Yvonne, go ahead, please.
No, that's okay. Well, again, thank you to our panelists. Thank you for the Campuseros who are watching. I know this is a global stage, so you might be chiming in from all over the world. Thank you to our amazing stage director, Juliana, for helping facilitate today. And again, our campus Campus Party Digital Edition. This event, as we said before, it has been transformed overnight. So a lot of hard work went into putting this on so quickly. We do look forward to seeing you in Detroit in July 2021. But at any point, we want to make this super easy for you to connect with all of the panelists today, as well as the organizations they represent. You can go to www.wherecanadabegins.com. And again, that's going to redirect to a page with everything on it. And other than that, again, a big shout out to our organization, only because they help sponsor this event. So I'm not giving myself a pat on the back, but I also want to thank Red Piston, who is one of our amazing app developers, tech companies who also supported this initiative. So again, enjoy the rest of Campus Party. Make sure this is 3 days, lots of things going on. So until next time, we thank you for joining us today. Thanks, team.
When on a collision course with the future, you can either adapt and survive or be left behind. Windsor Essex chose the third option: help define the future and thrive. As a global leader in the development and implementation of automation technologies, we're the ones that build things that build things. With over 2,000 acres under glass, we bring low-touch, high-tech agriculture to the rest of North America. And we have over 1,000 manufacturers in our region with a particular expertise in automotive, aerospace, food processing, pharmaceutical, nutraceutical, and medical devices. Combine all that with a quality of life that celebrates outdoor lovers, sports fans, festival goers, and everyone in between, and you just may have discovered what you're looking for. Windsor Essex, where Canada begins. Visit ChooseWindsorEssex.com to learn more.